Good afternoon. My name is Estela Guevara. We welcome you to the webinar, Finding and Innovating Your Career Through Challenging Times. This open online seminar is brought to you by the Continuing Education Division and the Faculty of Engineering of the Universidad de los Andes. This activity is an effort to promote our international summer school. Before we begin, we invite you to leave any questions you might have in the Q&A if you are at Zoom, or comment section if you are at Facebook. There will be a space to answer them at the end of the webinar. Now let's welcome Cesar Bargo, professor at Universidad Católica de Santos in Brazil, who is going to moderate this online seminar. Professor Bargo, good afternoon and welcome.
Well, good afternoon, those who are in Colombia, and good evening for those in Brazil, and also good afternoon for those in America. It's we talk about challenging times, and at the same time, we can say they are times in which innovation hits on our face every time, because this is a kind of thing that can only happen in these days. 3 countries united in during 1 hour promoting a joint seminar, right? Well, I'm not going to say much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a pleasure to introduce our panelists. The lecture tonight will be conducted by David Ochi, who is the Executive Director of the Innovation Incubator at California State University at Dominguez Hills. I have also to acknowledge the presence of my dear friend Kelly Oro, who is also working on promoting our summer school program, which is also a partnership between Dominguez Hills University, Universidade Católica de Santos, and Uniandes. David, you have the word.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's great to be here, and you're right, Professor Bargo, that this is an unusual opportunity that has been created through challenging times that we wouldn't have even necessarily thought about having an event like this and operating the way we are. And yet, what a great opportunity to be able to take advantage of that kind of collaboration that we have. So today is a bit about innovation and a little bit about where it goes, but it really is designed to be introspective, if you will, meaning it's a complicated word for looking in yourself and saying, okay, I know that the world has completely changed for 7.5 billion people. How do we make it so that we take advantage of that, so that we're optimizing where we're going in our careers, given those circumstances? And the world has been completely shut down in some ways over the last year, and yet it has opened up because we are now more comfortable and more operating efficiently within virtual environments. And as a result, the world has become much smaller, right? It used to be we'd have to get on a plane and show up for a seminar and a panel. And now we may be tired of Zoom, but we've become accustomed to the idea that we'll be sitting inside little boxes and getting content and information and knowledge and relationships built through digital means. So to give you a brief idea, my background is entrepreneurial. I started my first company when I was 13 and have been a startup / small business guy ever since. I've started several companies, have worked on many different projects, and have always been self-employed in some fashion, working for myself and running startups. Probably the most notable one that I worked on is we received the master country rights to Disney consumer products for Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And so I moved to Vietnam to launch Disney consumer products as a startup, which was a very unique opportunity. You rarely get to take a huge brand and treat it like a startup. And so it was a really unique chance to experience that. And I'm one of the, today I now work at Cal State Dominguez Hills, where we are at the incubator helping to take ideas and turn them into opportunities for students, as well as the faculty, staff, and alumni, and the community around us. And so it's a lot of fun. Now, one of the people who unfortunately couldn't be here today because of a number of issues, but Marty is also an innovator. He comes from a very long background of engineering and software development and things like that. He is a teacher that I've worked with many times on programs. And unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, he wasn't able to make it today. But we miss him and hope that he'll have a speedy recovery. I'll leave it at that. And so I do want to take a moment, if we can, and see if we could have you guys open up a web browser and visit this link. I'm putting it into the chat window for you, although I'm not sure if you'll be able to copy paste it, but you'll at least be able to see it. What I want you to do is take a minute and go to menti.com, and it'll ask you for a code, and the code there is 39576977, and just put what words come to mind to this question. What words come to mind when you think about career opportunities in your industry today? Again, there's no right or wrong answer, but what words come to mind? You can enter words or phrases and hit submit. If you have more, you can add more and submit some more. But I'll be quiet for a minute so you can take a moment to do that. We'll give you about another 30 seconds or so. We'll give you an extra bonus 10 seconds, see what you can put in, and we'll talk about these a little bit later when we get there. Okay, so again, it's still in the chat for you, so feel free to access it when you need to. But this will be interesting to see what kind of words have come to your mind regarding this. So one of the things that the pandemic did was it just threw a monkey wrench, if you will. It's a phrase for just creating a mess, right, with the employment jobs, right? So this is back from about a year ago when we saw in America, unemployment just went through the roof, right? All the service jobs shut down. There was just a tremendous amount of unemployment that came out of nowhere. And of course, government tried to figure out what to do with it. They started paying people just to keep the economy moving. But it created a lot of uncertainty in people's minds, right? And naturally, while that has recovered and the unemployment numbers have come down, there's still a lot of fear in the market. There are certain people whose careers have just moved perfectly fine through it, but there's a whole nother group that has just gone into panic mode because they're worried what happens when we go back to work. Even people whose jobs have been stable but have been working from home are questioning, do I want to stay at home? Do I like being home a little bit more than I used to? What can I do to adjust and adapt so that I'm moving forward in my career, but maybe being able to spend more time with my family and these sorts of things? So there's a lot of fluctuation taking place. In fact, a recent study that I saw said that 53% of people who were working from home would like to stay home for work at least part of the time, right? And employers hear that and they say, okay, wait a minute, we have to pay attention to that. So while there's lots of stress, there's lots of opportunity that's showing up too, right? Now, of course, many countries and many economies fell into a recession, the US included, and are just working their way back out, right? But you got to ask yourself, when there is a recession, what jobs are the most secure? And the interesting thing is, it's actually not big companies. When you hit recessions, it's the big companies that lay people off. because they have so much overhead, so much staff they have to try to pay for. They usually can't afford it when recessions start to take a toll. And so it's actually the smaller businesses that frequently survive better during downturns. And in fact, it's new businesses that create jobs during recessions, not usually the big companies, what we might call like a Fortune 500 company. So recession does not mean you have to retreat, though. The natural response for us as humans, right, is to look at ourselves and say, the economy doesn't look very good right now. Let me retreat and let's just hold on to what we have and see what we can do. And that's not necessarily what you have to do. You can actually use this as a chance to explore and to expand, right? And so recession doesn't have to mean you have to retreat from your career and say, well, gosh, I just have to survive it. Actually, one way to look at it is, how can I turn it into a positive and make the career move that I wasn't necessarily going to make before, right? A downturn does not equal a downfall. And of course, employment, as many found, does not equal security. So in other words, just because you have a job with a stable company, right, does not mean that that's going to be stable through a recession or a pandemic or whatever it may be. It's actually can be quite the opposite, right? Again, big companies tend to lay people off. Smaller businesses find ways to try to survive. And so one of the challenges that many people face as well is, now a good time for me to go back to school? Even if I'm not going to go get a full degree, maybe I should go back and get some new training and become what we call a lifelong learner, right? Get a new certificate, maybe expand what I'm doing, and see if I can balance work and college. And many of you are college students and are trying to figure out, how do I jump from college to work? And others are working full-time while going to school. And some of you may be exploring, well, I'm working full-time, but I really want to find something new. It's been many years maybe since you went to college. What could I jump into and learn from college? And I think one of the keys for us is to not think of college as something you do from when you're 18 to 25. Think of college as something that college of tomorrow is going to run from 18 to 118, if you can live that long, right? It's going to be a lifelong learning kind of opportunity. And that's really what this sort of extended education and continuing education really opens up the opportunity for. So what can you do in your career, right? Now, what most people do is when they're told, what should I do with my career? They do some variation of this famous book. So this book came out, I think, in like the 1970s or the 1980s. And it was, do what you love, the money will follow. And the idea is, find that passion of yours. And if you're passionate about it, you'll never work a day in your life, right? Is a famous expression in America. If you're passionate about your work, you'll never work a day in your life, because you'll always feel like you're just having a good time. Well, I was told to do this when I was in high school, right? I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And, I'm a high school senior, and I'm trying to decide what school to go to and all this. And ultimately, I was like, I'm going to be pre-med and pre-law because that's what mom and dad want, kind of thing. But ultimately, somebody told me, just find what you're passionate about. I'm like, oh, okay. These are the kinds of things I like. I like to horseback ride, and I like roller coasters and Disneyland, and I like video games, and I like music. And these are great things, right? And these are wonderful passions to have. But of course, they might not be the best careers. And there's a difference. By the way, I always like to point out, this person right here, excuse me, is not me. It may look like me. I was never cool enough to be like this, right? I didn't have this cool little glove that he had. I had the little gun. I remember the duck hunt gun, but I didn't have this cool staff that he has. I was never as cool as he was. But I often get compared to that, right? So here's the challenge, though. When you think about these things, these are hobbies, right? Playing a video game, playing music, these are hobbies. But when you decide to turn them into careers, guess what happens? You don't ride the horses. You end up cleaning horses or running a stable, not riding the horse, right? You don't ride the roller coaster and go to the park and have a good time. You're engineering the park, which is a bunch of math and physics, right? You're not doing the fun part, you're doing the work part. You can be a musician or a video gamer, and you will spend hours with hurt fingers and thumbs. You can become exhausted and you start to gain weight from sitting in a chair for 10 hours a day, right? Like, it just is not as the same as doing it as a hobby. And yet we're told, follow your passion. And that's not necessarily good advice. I recommend people follow opportunities, right? Because passions are wonderful and you want to have them, and hobbies are great, but finding opportunities to follow, that's when you're going to find people want to hire you, or you'll find opportunities that you can capitalize on, right? So again, I was the type who was on my path. I was pre-med, pre-law. Why? Because mom and dad said that's what you're doing. So it seemed when I was in high school, like there was this perfect linear path, right? That this is exactly what's going to happen. And here's, see if this matches anything close to what you're talking, what you had. I have a Japanese father, and my mother was American, right? And so when I was young, my dad said, you need to get good grades and work hard. You know, work hard, get good grades. I said, okay, Dad, that's great. And he said, and I said, what do I do after that? And he said, well, if you work hard and get good grades, you'll get into a good college. And I said, oh, okay. And I did that. And then he said, okay, now what do I do? And he said, well, you need to work hard and get good grades. And I said, why? And he goes, because when you finish college, you need to get into a good grad school. And I said, okay, what do I need to do? Get good grades and work hard. Like typical Japanese type of mindset, right? Just work hard and get good grades. And then I said, great, then what? And he said, well, after grad school, then you have to get a good job. And if you get good grades and work hard, you can get a good job. I said, okay, then what? And he said, well, if you work really hard, you don't have to worry about grades anymore, but work really hard. Okay, then what? And he goes, well, then you'll get promotions. And I said, okay, then what? And he said, well, then you'll be able to buy a house. And if you're lucky, you'll find some woman who will put up with you. You'll get married. And I said, what? And they said, then you'll have to work very hard at your marriage. And I said, okay, so work hard at my job, work hard at my marriage. And he said, yes. And then you will finally have children. And I said, okay, do I have to work hard then? He goes, there is no harder work than raising children, right? And I said, okay, great, then what? And he said, then you can tell your child, you need to work hard and get good grades, right? That was the story of life, right? And I envision it like this picture. It's just, we have this perfect line that we're going to follow, and our careers and our lives are all mapped out perfectly, and everything's going to go exactly according to plan. Something tells me, though, that there's probably not a single person on this webinar that their life has gone exactly the way they planned it when they were in high school. I would be amazed if anyone has had that. Life happens. We fall in love when we're young, and we get married, and it changes the trajectory. We go into a different school that was better than we expected or not as good as we expected. We end up getting injured, and it changes our whole trajectory, whatever it might be. Hey, Marty, it's good to see you.
Hi, David. You're telling the story of my life also. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's Marty, by the way. Good to have you here, and speedy recoveries to you.
It sounds like Jewish parents are the same as Japanese parents.
I think all parents are kind of like this, right? Do hard, work hard, get good grades, and I want grandkids. I mean, I think that's kind of the formula for most people, right? Of course, by now, most of us know that this is not the way life's really going to be, right? Life's going to take little twists and turns that we didn't expect, right? By the way, anyone want to guess on the panel where that street is? Any guesses?
Lombard Street in San Francisco.
Very good, Kelly. Lombard Street in San Francisco. Any idea why it's all rainbow colored?
No.
No guesses?
An LGBTQ event?
Everyone thinks it's for gay rights, which would make a lot of sense, but it actually has nothing to do with that. This is the 60th anniversary of Skittles. And if you don't know about it, Skittles are tiny little candies like M&Ms.
Oh.
They lined the street literally with multiple flavors of Skittles. Like there are about 27,000 calories, right, per person on that street. Like there are probably, 100 trillion calories. It's ridiculous. But it's a fun street. If you ever get the chance to go to San Francisco, you will. It's a fun street. It's very steep and winds. It's the crookedest street in the city, if not America, right? But of course, this is what we think life is going to be like. Like, it's not going to be a straight line. We're going to have little twists and turns, right? And I think all of us have experienced a twist or turn that we didn't expect, right? Here's the reality, though. This is more realistic of what your life's going to be like. And I should mention, you don't get to start up here. Most of us get to start down here, right? But what's going to happen in today's world, the average American graduating in 2020, so this is slightly old, right? It's last year's graduation class, and the data is from before pre-pandemic, so who knows, right, what that's done. But the average graduate of the class of 2020 was going to have 3.2 careers. Not jobs, careers. Which means they get up here and they go to college and they're like, woo, college is amazing. And they finally get their first job as a mechanical engineer working at an amusement park. And that's wonderful. And somewhere around 10 to 15 years, something happens. And they say, gosh, I'm going to do something. I'm done with this mechanical engineering at amusement parks. And they do something different. Like, I'm going to teach sailing lessons. And you're like, what does that have to do with being a mechanical? Well, there's lots of mechanics in our sailing, and I've used a little bit of that to do my own maintenance, but I'm really going in this new direction. And you end up climbing this whole different path. So 3.2 on average, completely different careers. Marty, I would venture to say that you're at least in your second career. Is that true?
Probably fourth.
Fourth, that's probably about right.
Yeah.
I was an entrepreneur for many, many, many years. And then 8 years ago, I opened an entrepreneur center, which is related, but now I'm in academics. And now I think about things like student outcomes, not billion-dollar investments and stuff. It just is such a different world, right? And so Marty is a great example. We've been through many people go through these careers. So you're going to have on average 3.2 careers. You're going to have 19 jobs. 19. Do you ever worry, like, what's my next job going to be? It's like, who cares? You've got 18 other ones. It's okay to mess up your first job because you can always get another one. And what's great is the workforce is becoming mobile, and we're allowing ourselves to not be stuck in a career for our entire life. Imagine being on this road and just keep going and going and going and going, and you never get to find new adventures in life. And so while it seems scary, it's actually normal now to go through multiple careers and multiple employers. And it's okay. If you lose one, they kick you out, you kick yourself out, it doesn't matter. Move on to the next one. But the question always is, what's next? Right? What am I going to do that's going to make it so I'm not afraid, that I can pay my bills? How am I not going to freak out because of what's happened, whether it's you lost your job or they made you lose your job by firing you, or the pandemic hit, or there's a new company coming into the town and they're shutting down the old systems. I mean, whatever it is. And that's where you got to look for opportunity. And instead of pigeonholing, we call it, right? Instead of defining yourself as being one type of employee, think of the opportunity you have to look for something new. And I think one of the great ways to do that is symbolized by this picture. What the heck does an apple with a sticker on it have to do with anything? Well, it comes from a guy named Tony Fadell. He is an Apple, or was an Apple engineer, a designer, worked with Steve Jobs on designing Apple products. And I want to take the first, say, about 6 minutes of his TED Talk and play it for you, because it's a very interesting insight into what you might be able to do to find opportunities, right? So let me know if you can't hear the audio. I'm going to shut up for the next 6.5 minutes and let you watch the beginning of this.
In the great 1980s movie, The Blues Brothers, There's a scene where John Belushi goes to visit Dan Aykroyd in his apartment in Chicago for the very first time. It's a cramped, tiny space, and it's just 3 feet away from the train tracks. As John sits on Dan's bed, a train goes rushing by, rattling everything in the room. John asks, "How often does that train go by?" Dan replies, "So often, you won't even notice it." And then something falls off the wall. We all know what he's talking about. As human beings, we get used to everyday things really fast. As a product designer, it's my job to see those everyday things, to feel them, and try to improve upon them. For example, see this piece of fruit? See this little sticker? That sticker wasn't there when I was a kid. But somewhere as the years passed, someone had the bright idea to put that sticker on the fruit. Why? So it could be easier for us to check out at the grocery counter. Well, that's great. We can get in and out of the store quickly. But now there's a new problem. When we get home and we're hungry and we see this ripe, juicy piece of fruit on the counter, we just want to pick it up and eat it. Except now we have to look for this little sticker and dig at it with our nails, damaging the flesh. Then rolling up that sticker, you know what I mean, and then trying to flick it off your fingers, right? It's not fun, not at all. But something interesting happened. See, the first time you did it, you probably felt those feelings. You just wanted to eat the piece of fruit, but you felt upset. You just wanted to dive in. By the 10th time, you started to become less upset. And you started to just do the peeling the label off. By the 100th time, at least for me, I became numb to it. I simply picked up the piece of fruit, dug at it with my nails, tried to flick it off, and then wonder, was there another sticker? So why is that? Why do we get used to everyday things? Well, as human beings, we have limited brain power. And so our brains encode the everyday things we do into habits, so we can free up space to learn new things. It's a process called habituation, and it's one of the most basic ways as humans we learn. Now, habituation isn't always bad. Remember learning to drive? I sure do. Your hands clenched at 10 and 2 on the wheel, looking at every single object out there, the cars, the lights, the pedestrians, is a nerve-wracking experience. So much so that I couldn't even talk to anyone else in the car, and I couldn't even listen to music. But then something interesting happened. As the weeks went by, driving became easier and easier. You habituated it. It started to become fun and second nature. And then you could talk to your friends again and listen to music. So there's a good reason why our brains habituate things. If we didn't, we'd notice every little detail all the time. It would be exhausting, and we'd have no time to learn about new things. But sometimes habituation isn't good. If it stops us from noticing the problems that are around us, well, that's bad. And if it stops us from noticing and fixing those problems, well, then that's really bad. Comedians know all about this. Jerry Seinfeld's entire career was built on noticing those little details, those idiotic things we do every day that we don't even remember. He tells us about the time he visited his friends and he just wanted to take a comfortable shower. He'd reach out and grab the handle and turn it slightly one way, and it was 100 degrees too hot. And then he'd turn it the other way, and it was 100 degrees too cold. He just wanted a comfortable shower. Now, we've all been there. We just don't remember.
No.
But Jerry did, and that's a comedian's job. But designers, innovators, and entrepreneurs, it's our job to not just notice those things, but to go one step further and try to fix them. See this? This person, this is Mary Anderson. In 1902 in New York City, she was visiting. It was a cold, wet, snowy day, and she was warm inside a streetcar. As she was going to her destination, she noticed the driver opening the window to clean off the excess snow so he could drive safely. When he opened the window, though, he let all this cold, wet air inside, making all the passengers miserable. Now, probably most of those passengers just thought, it's a fact of life. He's got to open the window to clean it. That's just how it is. But Mary didn't. Mary thought, what if the driver could actually clean the windshield from the inside so that he could stay safe and drive, and the passengers could actually stay warm? So she picked out her sketchbook right then and there and began drawing what would become the world's first windshield wiper. Now, as a product designer, I try to learn from people like Mary, to try to see the world the way it really is, not the way we think it is. Why? Because it's easy to solve a problem that almost everyone sees, but it's hard to solve a problem that almost no one sees. Now, some people think you're born with this ability, or you're not, as if Mary Anderson was hardwired at birth to see the world more clearly. That wasn't the case for me. I had to work at it.
So, what's Tony saying in this, right? In the end, Tony was a designer of Apple products, right? And if I encourage you to look up Tony Fadell in, Tony Fadell and TED Talk, and you'll find his talk. He goes on to talk about how working with Steve Jobs, they notice all the little things to make Apple products better than everyone else, right? But I think there's an application for that in our own lives and our own careers. What are the little things that we can do to make life better for ourselves and for others, right? What can we do to make it so that things are more functional, that we find that little thing that's an annoyance that we can then go and try to fix? And there's a couple little examples that you may be familiar with, but one of them is a company called Doodle. If you're familiar with Doodle, Doodle.com is a site where if I need to get Professor Bargo and Marty and Kelly, everyone together to have a meeting, it used to be I'd have to call up everybody, but then email made it so I could email everybody, right? And so I say, what time are you available? I'm available on Tuesday. I'm available on Thursday. What about 2 o'clock? And there were all these emails going back and forth. And they built a very simple software that says, hey, these are the times I'm available. Each of the people who are attending, check off the boxes when you're available. And the one that everyone's available on, that'll be our meeting time, right? It's a simple tool. It took them a weekend to write it, right? The first draft of it. It's now worth over $1 billion because it's just simpler to schedule. I use it 2, 3, 5 times a week, right? Scheduling meetings around campus and everything. It's just easier to say, here's a doodle, tell me when you're available, select this time and we're done, right? Another great example is a company called Calendly, which is now worth several $1 billion, where I could just say, hey, here's my calendar, book a time when you're available. And they can book the time on their own. They've got over 1 billion appointments scheduled. Imagine that, billions of appointments being scheduled, right? And they're worth several $1 billion as a result. But these are little annoyances that we're all used to, we all deal with, and we, again, have been, like Tony says, habituated to ignore them. But those represent opportunities. And they're opportunities not just for creating a new company, but for finding ways to be a better employee and offer opportunities to your boss to make it so that your career can move, right? And so one of the things that frequently comes up is people say, oh, but I have to make something better, right? I have to make things so that they're, I'm not an engineer or a scientist. I can't create things. It's okay, because ultimately, most of those things are tools. And if you think about it, when someone walks into a hardware store, they don't necessarily need a drill. They need a hole. They need some way to make a hole, and that's why they're at the hardware store looking for a tool that can help them do that. Find the opportunities where people need or want a hole, and you can create or work with people who can create the drill that will do it better. Doodle is just a better drill. It's better than emailing back and forth, right? Same thing with Calendly. These are really basic tools that can be built. And in your career, you can do the same sorts of things. What are the things where your boss needs a tool? What are the things where you say, my boss doesn't care about tools, I have a new opportunity to do something different, and I could go do something even better, either at a competitor or at another company or whatever it might be, to make it so that I can operate and build a drill if I need to and make holes that people need. So it doesn't have to be complicated, I guess is where I'm really trying to go with that. But think outside the standard corporate career path, that perfect straight line of all the cows going back to the barn, right? You got to think outside that. And it's a great thing to do, to just think big. There's no better time than right now, while the entire world economy is regathering its footing, to squeeze your foot in and make a mark. And now, because of Zoom and the force that the pandemic has put on us to be able to operate virtually, the world is everyone's oyster. I have programmers that I've seen that are now from Uganda. I would have never worked with a Uganda programmer before. But now people are comfortable just talking through Zoom. There's always been programmers globally, but more and more countries are showing that they have talent, right? It does not matter if you're in Brazil or Colombia or America or China or South Africa or Colombia. It doesn't matter where you are nearly as much as it did even just 15 months ago. But here's what I recommend. If you're going to think big, what could I do? How could I make my mark? What's that thing that I could work on? Don't just run out and quit your job necessarily and try it, right? Think big, but start small. Find something that you can work with that's not huge. It may not be revolutionizing your department. Maybe it's something really simple like changing. No joke, I saw this with somebody and it got them a promotion. They moved their staff meetings from Monday mornings to Friday mornings. They went into their boss and said, hey boss, I've noticed something, right? He broke habituation and noticed that Mondays are really busy at the office. There's all the emails from the weekend, all the new calls coming in from people who are upset about something. It all happens on Monday morning. Mondays are really difficult. And that's when you make us sit for an hour and a half in a meeting, not available to our customers and to our other employees. How about we move them to Friday when there's the lowest number of calls and emails that come in from customers? And we'll plan for the next week based on that Friday meeting. And that one little shift that they tried for 3 weeks and everyone loved, got that person a promotion 3 months later. And that was specifically told, this is why we're giving you this promotion. You have increased our efficiency more than you'll ever understand. We're doing this throughout the entire company now. We're shifting and looking for the best times for staff meetings to take place, right? And it was that little tiny change that led to a minor career shift in his case. But just, it doesn't have to be a huge revolutionary change is what I'm getting at, right? But if you decide, okay, I don't want to start a company right now, that's fine. You don't have to start something big. You can do something on the side or just find new ways to innovate your career within your company, right? Here's one thing I found that always takes the place, that there's 3 things that an employer really actually wants.
I only had
And I base that on what I've learned from actually, frankly, bluntly, these are the 3 reasons in the opposite way of why I've fired people. Every time I've ever let somebody go, it has been for one or more of these 3 reasons. The first one, do high quality work, right? Find ways to be really good at what you do, right? We all know those people who in the companies or fellow students or whatever, who always just perform at high levels. They're not the ones that get fired, right? Well, unless they do it late all the time. And then the boss is saying, you do wonderful work, but why can't you just do it on time, right? We need it by a certain date and you keep missing the deadline. So it almost doesn't matter how much high quality work you do. If it's not on time, you're going to upset a boss or a customer, and that's going to lead to problems. The third one is be pleasant to work with. Nobody likes to work with cranky pants. Doesn't matter how good your work is or how wonderful you get it on time. If you're not pleasant to work with, you're not going to last. Right? And so why do I say this? Well, because ultimately, we've got to figure out what can be done to make our careers move forward. My suggestion is think outside the box about where your career could go. Now is the time to be capturing that, because there's so much churn and turmoil in the marketplace of jobs that it's a perfect time to be doing that, right? When it comes to the opportunities outside, you say, okay, well, what if I don't want to leave? I want to stay at my current employer. Then find ways to innovate your career within the company. And how can I do better work, better on time, and be more pleasant to work with, and help others around me to do the same thing? Believe me, if you do that, you will get noticed and you'll be happy about it, right? So, and of course, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the box there. But I want to take a moment to take a look at what we came up with in our word cloud, we call it. So this was the question we asked way back at the beginning. What words come to mind when you think about career opportunities in your industry? Innovation, technology, future, change. What great words, right? To describe what's happening in your industries and where careers are going. I do see some words that aren't as good, right? Like up in here, I see afraid and layoffs, right? These are realities. But what I would encourage you to do is look at these as opportunities. When somebody's laid off, of course, the old position goes away or it gets replaced by somebody else, but that means that door is closed, but you never have a door closed without another one opening. You just got to go find what door opened for you. The world has opportunities. And if you stay in the mindset of being afraid and scared of a layoff, that uncertainty and that fear and that worry about the unfairness of it will pull you down. Look at it as an opportunity to crack into a whole new area. And again, 3.2 careers. If it's a totally different thing than what you were doing before, that's not necessarily bad. And if it's not the exact right job you go into, don't worry, there's 18 more that you're going to have to deal with in your life. And that's the average, which means half are going to have more than that, right? So there's just a wide opportunity. Look at it as a blessing, right? I got so frustrated at UC Irvine, my previous employer, right, where I launched an entrepreneur program because of the bureaucracy. And I said, gosh, why is it so difficult to get anything done here? And any of you who are in academics know academic bureaucracy is like nothing else on the planet. It is a unique beast. And coming from being a startup guy, where we would just get 3 of us around a table and say, you good, you good, all right, and the decision's made, 6-month cycles were painful. And it hurt me to leave UCI. I was like, can't I make it better? And what it did was it really opened up new opportunities for me. And I found whole new opportunities to explore as a result of not being mired in that work. So while it's easy to be fearful and it's understandable, it's actually a matter of making a little mind shift. What's an opportunity that I can jump into? What career can I jump into? What startup can I jump into? Or even better, what opportunity can I take advantage of that I couldn't have done based on where I was before whatever change took place, right? We are in a very unique timeline in history right now, where the entire world has hit the reset button. Everything is different everywhere. If you've never experienced what an opportunity looks like, close your eyes and imagine what it would be like to start something new today in this environment. If you feel scared, that's normal. If you feel uncertain, that's normal. If you feel excited, that's normal too. It's an opportunity that's in front of you that really does give you a real fresh perspective on where you can go. So what are the next steps? Whatever your situation is, and of course, in here we've got hundreds of different situations that are going on. Don't panic. Whatever it is, don't panic. It's you don't have to. Find the needs around you in your industry. Go talk to people through Zoom or have a coffee with them. What's been going on? What's the challenge? I mean, Kelly and I have done this for the last year, What's going to happen in continuing education and extension programs? We see nothing but opportunities for where that's going to go. Look for those in whatever industry you're in, or find a whole new industry to do it. Always focus on what customers want and employers want. They're the same. High quality work, do it on time, be pleasant to work with. It's a hard mix, but if you can get it, you'll be a very happy camper, right? And you'll get rewarded for it. And of course, I encourage people to expand your horizons, to grow your opportunities. If you stay within a small bubble, the opportunities that you will be exposed to will stay small. If you branch out and try something new, even if it's outside your comfort zone, you will be amazed at the opportunities that will show up for you. When I was 21, I guess it was, I was a senior in college. I got on an airplane and I flew from California to Manila in the Philippines. And I said, I'm launching an international consumer products distribution business. And I landed there. I didn't know a single human being. And I just said, hi, I have American products. They're really high quality. Who should I be talking to? And I talked to taxi drivers, hotel employees, restaurant people, people sitting in restaurants, people walking on the street. And within 3 weeks, I had 40 different partners I was working with to set up distribution. And 2 weeks after that, all of it was buttoned up, ready to go. And we had distribution and we were selling tens of thousands a month, right? If I hadn't gotten on that plane and just tried it and see what would happen, it wouldn't have happened, right? And I'm not saying you need to get on a plane and fly someplace, but have coffee with someone outside your industry. Go ask that neighbor you've been meaning to talk to, hey, can we have coffee and just chat about what life's like? What are you doing in your business? Find that way to grow those opportunities. You know, what we're doing in this is we're pulling together 3 different universities, right? And saying, let's get together and have coffee together and go through a program and learn about what we can do. Because if we work together, we'll find ways to help each other get on top of a mountain. And whether it's you or someone you work with that ends up on the mountain first, it doesn't matter. Everyone will end up on top of a mountain if they're given that chance, right? And so what I want to take a moment to do is I'm going to share this with you. This is our contact information. It's got Marty's on the right. It's got my information on the left. We are happy, and I'll type it into the chat window for you as well. But one of the really unique things that we have is an opportunity to work together on an innovative product development program that I want to take a moment. Marty and I are putting together the core of the material, where we're looking and saying, how can we look at product development as a means of growing careers as well as launching companies or new products within companies. There's all sorts of great topics. It's several weeks. It runs about 5 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. There's design thinking and creativity and innovation. That's a very fun one. I will say myself, it's a fun one to go through. The ecosystem, how you can do agile product development. It sounds weird, but how can you make lots of versions of your products very quickly so that you can make the best product in the end? There's something called the business model canvas. How do you finance all this? Great to have an idea, but where's the money going to come from? How do you know that the market wants it? Is what market validation is about. There's, of course, all sorts of information about communications and presentation skills and all of that. But it's a fun program. The students that work in this end up becoming very, very bonded together. It's about 40 hours of material in the end. We bring in all sorts of industry experts. You end up with a certificate from the Cal State Dominguez Hills. And of course, we're interfacing Brazilian, Colombian students together with an American school. And so all of it coming together, we find these opportunities, right? When you're in a group working with Brazilian or Colombian students, things come together. You start to build relationships. And Kelly and I know, Marty knows too, right? These students actually keep in touch and form businesses and get jobs together and all sorts of things. So I encourage you to look into this some. Take a moment, and if you have questions about it, we're happy to answer them now as well. But I'll end with the thought that your career is yours. No one is going to make your career better or worse for you. You have to decide what you want your career to be. And if it's finding an opportunity and jumping on it, you'll find that really puts you in a whole nother league. It really steps you up into a game that you may not think you're ready for, you may not be comfortable with yet, but you will find that you're capable of it. And you'll find that the opportunities that come to you that you can capitalize on will be way more than you can handle. And you'll eventually have to start picking which ones you're really going to work on. And that is the best place to be in a career, is where you're choosing what you want to work on, not being forced into whatever you have to have right then, right? And so I encourage you to look outside the box, take advantage of opportunities like this to expand those horizons, and really define your career in a way that's going to take advantage of the pandemic and the challenges we've had and put you onto the trajectory that you've wanted to be on for many years. So thank you for all of your time today. I'm going to put this back up for the with our contact information, but we'd love to field any questions that you may have. Please let me know what anything that there might be.
Well, I was told I was supposed to read some questions here. Okay, there is one here. How to improve professional development? Someone is asking.
How to improve professional development. So, Marty, and feel free to jump in on any of these, Marty or Kelly.
I took a course at Stanford years ago with a very smart man named Tom Peters, a well-known author and also a McKinsey consultant. And his recommendation to us was, you should always think of yourself as a consultant, not as an employee. When you look in the mirror every morning, you should say to yourself, what am I going to do today to make myself a better employee, a better engineer, a better marketing person? And he said, you have total responsibility for yourself, because companies don't care about you. They're not interested in your career. They just want you to produce the most for them. But it's up to you to become better and better and have more value. And to this, I don't remember much else from the course, but I remember that.
That's wise advice. I think the one thing I'll add is professional development is sometimes thought of as just a career. It's something a company does, right? Oh, I have to do a professional development, 10 hours a year, or something like that. Professional development is whatever is going to help you in your career. For me, professional development when I was 21 was getting onto an airplane with some samples and landing in Manila and learning what it was like to sell, right? And that's a different world. And now it could be as simple as just having a Zoom or attending a webinar in a country you've never even been to, right? Like these are all acts of professional development, but the key is always be growing. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. And if you get into a career and you just stay there, you will eventually get passed by the company or the job, right? You have to keep pushing forward and growing. And frankly, it's where you find the most reward. It's where you feel fulfilled. I mean, imagine, Professor, right? You go through and you say, I published this great paper, and then you just republish the same paper every year. I mean, one, they wouldn't let you, but it's because you have to grow. You can't expand knowledge and expand opportunities by just publishing the same paper every year, right? You have to find new papers, new knowledge to publish. But very good question.
David, there's Eduardo here who has a question is, what are the questions that you have to ask ourselves to identify the proper time to change our career?
Oh, great question.
I use a very simple one. When you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, I'd rather be sick than go to work, or I'd rather be dead than go to work, you've reached the point. But in seriousness, the advice I've given to my own children and my grandchildren is, when in your job, when it becomes easy and comfortable, and you don't, and you know that you can handle it really well, it's time to figure out how to move up or move on.
That's very true. The other thing I'll add to that is the natural tendency will be to stay in your current job too long. You'll make up excuses of why it's not quite yet, or if I just get my student loans paid off, then I'll go look at another job, or wait until I get that promotion so that I can then get the job over at this other place that'll match the same title. Like, people come up with excuses to stay. If you're even thinking about a different career, that should be your green light, right? If you're saying, I don't know if this, I've been doing this for a while and I'm not sure, that's your green light to explore. And my recommendation to you would be, the question to ask is, am I at a time where I should be exploring a new opportunity? And I would always say that the answer is almost always yes, but you will feel that. You will notice that and say, yeah, you know what? I just think it might be that right time. Don't say no to that ever. Always open up the opportunity of maybe, because that's when you'll find something. You may not consciously find or know what it is, but your mind will shift into, I'm going to have my ears open for something that might be right for me. Let me just listen for it. And when you listen for it, all of a sudden, things become visible to you. Have you ever noticed when the famous example we use in America is, if you talk about a little VW bug, right, the old car, if you talk about that, when you're driving, all of a sudden you see lots of VW bugs. Whereas before you don't notice them, but when you think about it, you notice it. It's the same thing with opportunities. If you're not thinking about it, they go right past you. But when you're saying, hey, I might be in a position now where it's a good time for me to just explore, all of a sudden conversations and things you see, you go, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I should talk with that person about what they're doing. Maybe there's a good fit for me to make a shift, or that's a problem I could solve for you. What would that look like if I came and worked for you on that? And so it's opening up the ears. When to actually make the shift, that's a tougher question, because it involves, where's your family at? What income needs do you have? How much risk is there? There's lots of things. But my recommendation is, if you're even thinking about the opportunity and maybe I should, say yes. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job immediately. It means open your ears up to the opportunity. The fact that you're in this meeting means the answer is yes, right? You wouldn't come to an event that was focused around career innovation or something if it weren't for the fact that you're at least thinking about it. And if not, you say, hey, that's not for me right now. Great. Do good work, do it on time, and be pleasant to work with, and your career will move in a great direction. But if you start thinking about something, tell yourself yes, give yourself the chance to explore it. You will find that it will pay off very much so in the future. Great question.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any other questions. So if anyone in the attendance wants to ask something else, this is the time. And this slide shows the contact information for Brazilians. And also you have on the right Kelly Otto's information contact. So any one of them would be helpful in case you feel like wanting to know more about this program, okay? I'd just like to add that it's a pleasure to see Martin there, and I hope he's recovering fast. It's also very nice, and I have forgotten how good it is to see these glimpses of wisdom he kind of gently throws up in the air to us.
It's good to
That's
see you
Marty.
again, Professor.
Well, thank you all for this opportunity. I'm excited about the opportunity to work with the students that join up the program. But either way, find a way to find opportunities in your life and take advantage of those as they show up. And whether it's starting a new company or moving your career on a new trajectory, you'll find that that'll pay off a lot. Thank you for having me at both universities, especially Uniandes, for this great opportunity. And I look forward to working with all of you. Please keep in contact with myself, Marty, Kelly, everyone. We are here to help in any way we can.
Perfect. Professors, well, we thank you for your presentation, and to the assistants for sending these questions too. We just shared you a link that we ask you to open before leave in the chat. Sorry. The chat. In this link, you can also find other activities like this one that we have scheduled. For example, tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we will have the webinar Herramientas de la Inteligencia de Negocios So we invite you to participate in this activity too. Again, thank you for your presentation and for your participation. Also to those who join us on Facebook Live too. We hope that this activity has been interesting for you and that you continue to enjoy it with us, these kind of activities. Have a happy afternoon. Thank you again for participating. See you soon and see you at the next activity. Good afternoon.
Thank you all.
Bye.